with the motion hypothesis, says kind of the same thing, that this experience is necessary to develop visual spatial skills, but it's not enough for you to just observe moving objects. You have to actually pay attention to them. So they did an experiment, 2 cats on a carousel. So carousel spinning around in a circle. One of the cats had their legs moving and they were actually moving the carousel around. And the other cat was just sitting in the basket, was just along for the ride. So when they got them done with the experiment, the cat that was actually moving was part of the experiment, had evidence of depth perception and dynamic visual acuity, whereas the other cat that was just along for the ride did not. And so that's where that idea comes from, that you have to actually attend to moving objects, because obviously the cat that was moving had to pay attention to his surroundings, whereas the other cat could just chill, sleep, whatever. So that's important. So thinking about movement and the sense of vision, vision is obviously very important for movement, but can you move without vision? Is that possible? And that may seem like a silly question at first, because after we've talked about all those things and why vision is important for movement, you may immediately think no, but that's not true, because we have several people with visual impairments that can move around just fine. They just need an aid. They may be slower. They may have some time to adjust to their environment. And so they may have some difficulty, but they can usually pick it up quite well. The problem with not having vision or not having very good vision is that you're not going to be able to adjust as well to changes in your environment because you can't see them, especially ones that are static, don't have any sound or texture to them, right? When we can see objects, we can adjust to them before we get to them. And so that's why vision becomes important for movement. Remember that blindness is not always complete loss of vision. So you can have smaller visual impairments. Remember back to the slide with the changes, the diseases that occur with age. So it may be just central vision's affected or just peripheral vision's affected. It may be just blurry, but we can see big objects and change in contrast. And so you may think about that when you're planning motor skills and practices, that just because somebody has a visual impairment doesn't mean that they can't see at all. And then also think about as babies develop. So we said that vision is important for movement, but that movement can occur without vision. But what happens with congenital blindness, where a baby is born with birth, is that they end up being delayed in their motor skills, not because their movement is affected. They're perfectly capable of movement. Their muscles work just fine. The problem is motivation, really. So when Josie was about 7 months old, we would motivate her to crawl by putting our cell phone just out of reach of her. Whatever it was, the lights, or just because mommy and daddy played with it, she wanted to play with it. But the pure curiosity of this object that was just out of her reach was what motivated her to move. And even when she got a little older, when we were trying to get her out of the habit of crawling and trying to teach her to walk, we still used the cell phone. We would throw it across the room. And so because crawling was a little bit slower, she figured out how to walk for that purpose. So with just that, just the motivation, a child that has congenital blindness may be 7 to 8 months behind a child that was born with vision, perfectly acute in development of walking, walking in particular, standing, pulling up, sitting, those kinds of things may not be as behind, but walking, they'll be more behind just for that motivation.